Today we will start Unit 4 of the course. Unit 4 of the course deals with a very important algebraic concept, and it is called factoring. Factoring algebraic expressions. Well, you know how to factor numbers, is that right? If I give you a composite number, you can break it down into its factors, prime factors. Well, if I give you a number like 6, how do you factor a number like 6? 6 equal to 2 times 3. Something that you know very well. Well, we can do the same thing using algebraic expressions. Algebraic expressions can be composite or prime. If it is a composite expression, we can write it as the product of two or more algebraic expressions. And those will be called the factors of the algebraic expression. To begin with, in this lesson, we will learn how to factor GCF. What is the meaning of GCF? The greatest common factor. We will learn how to factor out the greatest common factor of a number of given algebraic expressions. Now, in lesson 1, we discussed how to write a number as the product of its prime factors. For example, 60 can be factored as, is that right? 2 times, 2 times, 3 times 5. Now, these are called the prime factors of 60. 45 can be factored as, can you do that in your mind? 45, look at this, 3 times 3 is 9, 9 times 5 is 45. So 45 is 3 times 3 times 5. Now, tell me, what is the greatest common factor, or GCF? GCF stands for greatest common factor. What is the greatest common factor of 60 and 45? What is the meaning of a common factor? Look at this. You have a 3. 3 is a factor of 60. 3 is also a factor of 45. Therefore, 3 is a common factor between 60 and 45. 5 is a factor of 60. 5 is also a factor of 45. Therefore, 5 is a common factor. Well, therefore, what is the greatest common factor? If you look at this, 3 times 5 is 15. So, 15 is a factor of 60. 15 is a factor of 45 also. And so, what is the greatest common factor? Well, the greatest common factor, therefore, is 3 times 5, that is 15. Alright? Let us now consider multiplication. Remember, factoring is actually opposite to multiplication. We have done multiplying algebraic expressions. Okay, let's look at one example that is familiar to us. 2x squared multiplied by 5x plus 2y minus 3. Now, how do you multiply this? Multiplying this means you multiply this 2x squared with each of the terms inside the parenthesis. So, multiply 2x squared with each term inside the parenthesis. What does that give you? 2x squared times 5x plus 2y minus 3 can be multiplied as 2x squared multiplied by 5x. That is the first term. Then 2x squared multiplied by positive 2y. And remember, the 2x squared is positive. Plus 2x squared multiplied by negative 3. Can you multiply these out now? Now, if you look at this, what is the greatest common factor? You see, this is the first term, this is the second term, and this is the third term. And if you look at these three terms, 2x squared is common in all those three terms. Now, this 2x squared, therefore, is called the greatest common factor of these three terms. You see, look at the first term, the second term, and third term. The greatest common factor that is present in each of these three terms is 2x squared. And now, once you identify the greatest common factor, you can pull that out and keep it outside a parenthesis. You see, 2x squared is called the greatest common factor, or GCF, of this polynomial. Which polynomial? Of this polynomial. Now, factoring out the GCF from the polynomial, we are now going to factor out the GCF. What is the GCF here? 2x squared. How do we factor it out? You can pick this 2x squared and bring it out and leave it outside a parenthesis, and everything else will then be written inside the parenthesis. So look at the way we're going to factor it out. 2x squared times 5x plus 2x squared times 2y plus 2x squared times negative 3 is now written as 2x squared is factored out. So that sits outside the parenthesis, and inside the parenthesis you have the remaining terms. What are they? 5x plus 2y minus 3. Look at the sign there. Inside the parenthesis you have 5x plus 2y minus 3. Now, we have now factored this polynomial. Now, this is how we factor out the greatest common factor. Okay, let's practice with more of those. Factor out the greatest common factor of 15p plus 25. In order to factor out the greatest common factor, how many terms are there? There are two terms. Now, there are numbers and there are variables. So what do? 15p can be factored as 5 times 3p. Is that right? Yes. Plus 25 can be factored as 5 times 5. Now tell me, what is the greatest common factor between these two terms? 5 is common. That means you can factor that 5 out. So 5 is the greatest common factor that we can factor out. And how does that now become? 5 times 3p plus 5 times 5 equal to 5. The common factor is pulled out, and the remaining terms are put inside a parenthesis, and that will be 3p plus 5. Now, if you multiply, you can go back to our original expression. Is that right? This means 5 times 3p, that is this, plus 5 times 5 is this. So this is the factored form. We have factored out the greatest common factor. Alright, another one. Factor out the GCF of 6x squared minus 12x plus 21. Can you look at that and tell me what is the greatest common factor in these three terms? There are three terms there. Well, at one look, you know 3 is the greatest common factor, because x squared, x, there is no x there, so x is not a common factor. Between 6, negative 12 and 21, we can identify 3 as the greatest common factor. So look at the way I'm writing each term. 6x squared I wrote as 3 times 2x squared. And this is where you got to pay attention. Minus 12x is written as plus 3 times negative 4x. After you have factored out a positive 3, what is left is a negative 4x. Positive 3 times negative 4x is negative 12x. You need to practice this particular skill. So negative 12x is factored as positive 3 times negative x, plus 21 is 3 times 7. And now you have identified the 3 as the greatest common factor. We pull that out. Alright, so factoring the GCF leaves 2x squared in the first term. What is left in the second term? Minus 4x in the second term and 7 in the third term. That means by pulling out the 3, we pulled out the 3 and keep it outside the parenthesis, and inside the parenthesis you have 2x squared minus 4x plus 7, and that is the way to factor out the GCF. Okay, practice that one more time. Another one. Factor out the GCF of 12x cubed minus 8x squared minus 6x. How many terms are there? There are 3 terms. Now what are the 3 terms? The first term is positive 12x cubed. The second term is minus 8x squared. The third term is minus 6x. Alright? First, look at the numbers. 12, 8, and 6. What is the common factor in 12, 8, and 6? Well, the common factor is 2 there. Alright? How about x cubed, x squared, and x? What is the common factor among x cubed, x squared, and x? The common factor is x. Is that right? X cubed is x times x times x. X squared is x times x. And of course x is by itself. That means the common factor there is x. So among the numbers 12, 8, and 6, we have 2 as the common factor. Among the variables x cubed, x squared, x, we have x as the common factor. So what is the greatest common factor? The greatest common factor is the product of the two, 2x. Okay, now can you write each of this term as 2x multiplied by whatever is remaining? Look at this. 12x cubed is written as 2x multiplied by 6x squared. Do you understand that? 12x cubed is 2x multiplied by 6x squared. You see, 2 times 6 is 12. X times x squared is x cubed. Alright. How do we write minus 8x squared? Now we're going to factor out a 2x. That will be positive 2x times positive 2x times what? Will give you negative 8x squared. That will be positive 2x times negative 4x. Positive 2x times negative 4x is minus 8x squared. Similarly, positive 2x times negative 3 is minus 6x. Alright, I want you to look at this one more time. Factor each of these terms using 2x as the common factor. So 12x cubed is 2x times 6x squared. Minus 8x squared is positive 2x times negative 4x, and negative 6x is positive 2x times negative 3. And now we can pull out this common factor 2x. When you pull out the common factor 2x, what is left in the first term is 6x squared. What is left in the second term is minus 4x. What is left in the third term is minus 3. Let's write that. So our first term will be, we are going to pull out this 2x. 2x has come out outside the parenthesis. What is now going to stay inside the parenthesis? It will be 6x squared minus 4x minus 3. Okay, let's go and do another one. Factor out the GCF of 24a squared b squared plus 16ab to the power of 4 plus 64ab to the power of 3. Now, here there are numbers 24, 16 and 64. Can you figure out the common factor? What is the greatest common factor of 24, 16 and 64? Well, isn't it 8? Yes, is that right? 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 8 is 64. Can you figure out that way? Alright. What is now, you got a squared, a and a. What is the common factor among a squared, a and a? That will be a. What is common among b squared, b to the power of 4 and b cubed? Have you figured it out? The common factor there is b squared. And therefore, what is the greatest common factor in these three terms? Among the numbers, the common factor is 8. Among a squared, a and a, the common factor is a. Among b squared, b to the 4 and b cubed, the common factor is b squared. So the greatest common factor is 8ab squared. Well, I was trying to make you think in your mind. Let's now write it down. Alright, among the numbers, the common factor is 8. Among a squared, a and a, the common factor is a. Among b squared, b to the 4 and b cubed, the common factor is b squared. I hope you understood the way I'm picking the common factor. And therefore, what is the greatest common factor in these three terms? Is 8ab squared. There you are. Now, can you write 24a squared b squared as 8ab squared multiplied by something else? Well, 8 times 3 is 24. A times a is a squared, and b squared times 1 is b squared. Therefore, 24a squared b squared can be written as 8ab squared times 3a. How did I get this 3a? Watch it again. 8 times 3 is 24. That's how I got that 3. A times a is a squared. That's the a. And b squared times 1 is b squared. 3a times 1 is 3a. Let's go to the second term. 16ab to the 4. Now, 8ab squared is taken out from there. What is left? Look at this. 8 times 2 is 16. So that 2 is remaining. A times 1 is a. So that 1 will not make any difference. b squared times b squared is b to the 4. So what is remaining in the second term is 2b squared. Are you following me? 8ab squared times 2b squared is 16ab to the power of 4. In the same way, what is 64ab cubed? 64ab cubed is 8ab squared times what? 8 times 8 is 64. So the 8 will be there. A times 1 is A, that's 1, 8 times 1. B squared times B is B cubed, so there's a B there. 8ab squared times 8b is 64ab cubed. Okay, once you write it like this, we know 8ab squared now is the common factor. We pull that out. That will be 8ab squared comes out, and all the remaining will stay inside the parenthesis. That will be 3a plus 2b squared plus 8b. Remember, if there is no sign to the left of a quantity, that is positive. So that will be 3a plus 2b squared plus 8b. You need to practice this a little more on your own. Okay, let's go to the next one. Factor out the GCF of 36x y squared z cubed plus 36x cubed y squared z plus 9x squared y z. Now, I have used different colors to distinguish what? There are numbers in red, the terms in X are in dark green, and the terms in Y are light green, the terms in Z are blue. Okay, let's use the same mental activity. Think mentally. What is the greatest common factor of 36 and 9? Can you figure out what is the common factor of 36 and 9? Did you get 9? Yes, 9 times 4 is 36, 9 times 1 is 9. So among the numbers, the common factor is 9. Alright, let's go to terms in X. X cubed, x squared. What is the common factor there? The common factor is x. Alright, y squared, y. What is the common factor there? Is y. And finally, z cubed, z and z. What is the common factor there? It is z. Did you see that? Alright, so what is the GCF of all these three terms? It will be 9xyz. 9xyz. Let's write it down. Among 36 and 9, the common factor is 9. Among x cubed and x squared, the common factor is x. Among y squared and y, the common factor is y. And among z cubed, z and z, the common factor is z. And therefore, what is the greatest common factor? It will be 9xyz. Alright? Now what you need to do is write each of these terms by removing the greatest common factor. Alright? 36xy squared z cubed will be equal to 9xyz multiplied by what? When you remove this factor from 36xy squared z, what is left then? Now this is the way to find what is left. 9 times 4 is 36, so there will be a 4 there. X times 1 is x, so that's 4 times 1. Y times y is y squared, so there is a y, so that will be a 4 times 1 times y. Z times z squared is z cubed, so what is left is 4yz squared. 36xy squared z cubed is 9xyz multiplied by 4yz squared. Do you understand that? Okay, let's go to the second term. After removing the common factor, 9xyz, well, I left out that z here. You must write that z. The common factor contains 9xyz. Alright? After removing the 9xyz, what is left in the second term? 9 times 4 is 36. There's a 4 there. X times x squared is x cubed. Squared there. Y times y is y squared. So there's a y there. And z times 1 is z. Well, of course, you don't need 1. So, 36x cubed y squared z is 9xyz multiplied by 4x squared y. Alright, let's go to the next one. 9x squared yz. Out of that, 9xyz has come out. What is left? What is left is a lone x. Alright, now we factor out this 9xyz. We pull it out, and what will be inside the parenthesis? Inside the parenthesis will be 4yz squared plus 4x squared y plus x. There you are. Okay, so that is now 9xyz times 4yz squared plus 4x squared y plus x. Now, this is a very good one. I want you to practice this one more time. Once you know how to do this, you will feel very comfortable with factoring common factors. Alright, another one. Factor the greatest common factor of negative 14y cubed z to the 5 minus 28y cubed z to the 6 plus 9xy squared z squared. Alright, look at the numbers there. Negative 14, negative 28, 9. Are there any common factors there? Well, look at the way I have identified a common factor. Among negative 14, I have taken the signs along with the number. Negative 14, negative 28, and positive 9. I have identified negative 1 as the common factor. Now, where does the negative 1 come in positive 9? Well, you know that a positive number can be written as the product of two negative numbers. In fact, watch me do this. Negative 14 is negative 1 multiplied by positive 14. That's right. And negative 28 is negative 1 multiplied by positive 28. And 9 can be written as negative 1 multiplied by negative 9. Do you understand that? Negative 14 is negative 1 times positive 14. Negative 28 is negative 1 times positive 28. And positive 9 is negative 1 times negative 9. You see how convenient that way of writing becomes. Now look, we have a common factor, negative 1. Now, once you have identified negative 1 as the common factor, what are the remaining factors? Remaining in negative 14 is positive 14. Remaining in negative 28 is positive 28. And remaining in positive 9 is negative 9. So after the negative 1 is factored out, you are left with positive 14, positive 28, and negative 9. I hope you understand that. Okay? Now, among y cube, and y squared, can you figure out the common factor? y cube, and y squared, the common factor is y squared. And among z to the 5, z to the 6, and z squared, the common factor is z squared. Okay, now let's write each of these terms. What is therefore the greatest common factor? The greatest common factor is negative 1 times y squared times z squared, and that is negative y squared z squared. Okay, we are now going to write each of these terms as this common factor multiplied by the remaining factors. Alright, can you tell me what will be remaining? Can we do some mental exercise? After we factor out a negative 1, you see the negative sign stands for a negative 1. After we factor out a negative 1, what is left in here is a positive 14. After you factor out a y squared, what is remaining there is a y. After you factor out a z squared, what is remaining in the first term is z to the power of 3. And so, when the common factor negative y squared z squared is taken out, what is left in the first term will be positive 14 y z cubed. Alright, let's write that. Negative y squared z squared is factored out from the first term, leaving a positive 14 times y times z cubed. You can see again, there is a small printing error here. The first term is not negative y squared z to the 5, it is y cubed z to the 5. So make that small correction. That will be y cubed. So from negative 14 y cubed z to the 5, we factor out a negative y squared z squared. What is remaining is a positive 14 y z to the third. Alright, let's go to the second term. After factoring out a negative y squared z squared, what is remaining in the second term is a positive 28. And here again, that same printing error has come. This is y cubed. So, from that y cubed, there you have that y cubed. Okay. So from y cubed, a y squared is factored out, leaving a y. Z to the 6th, you factor out a z squared. What is left is z to the power of 4. So after factoring out negative y squared z squared, from negative 28y cubed z to the 6. What is left is positive 28y z to the 4. And finally, you factored out a negative 1 from a positive 9. What is the remaining factor? Positive 9 is negative 1 times negative 9. After factoring out a negative 1, you are left with a negative 9. Y squared is factored out. Z squared is factored out. And you are left with an x. That will be negative 9x. Alright? Now pull out your common factor. What is your common factor? Negative y squared z squared. Pull it out. What do we get? Pulling out leaves positive 14yz cubed in the first term, plus 28yz to the 4 in the second term, and minus 9x in the third term. And so the answer is negative y squared z squared times 14yz cubed plus 28yz to the 4 minus 9x. Now, this is a little tedious one, but follow step by step. Do this one more time on your own, and then you will really understand it. Okay, let's move on. Factor out a negative factor of negative 20a minus 10. You've got to factor out a negative factor. Alright? Can you tell me among negative 20 and negative 10, what is the common factor? The common factor is negative 10. How? Now, watch me do this. Negative 20 can be written as negative 10 times positive 2. And negative 10 can be written as negative 10 times positive 1. Alright? So, negative 20 is negative 10 times positive 2. And negative 10 is negative 10 times positive 1. Look at that. Negative 10 is the common factor. And watch again. After negative 10 is factored, the remaining factor is positive 2. And in negative 10, when negative 10 is factored, the remaining factor is a positive 1. Alright, so let's now, the GCF therefore is negative 10, because A is not a common factor. Therefore, look at the way I write negative 20a. Negative 20a is negative 10 times positive 2a. And minus 10 is written as negative 10 times positive 1. And now we factor out that negative 10. Negative 10 comes out, leaving it 2a plus 1. A very important skill, factoring out a negative factor from a given number of terms. Alright, let's go to the next one. Factor out a negative factor of negative y to the power of 5 minus 6y squared minus 4. Can you look at that and tell me what is the greatest common factor there? Well, the only common factor among the three terms is negative 1. There is no other common factor there. Why? Let me show that one more time. Now, negative y to the power of 5 can be written as negative 1 times positive y to the power of 5. Negative 6y squared is negative 1 times positive 6y squared, and negative 4 is negative 1 times positive 4. You need to learn how to write these factors. Negative y to the power of 5 is a negative 1 times positive y to the power of 5. And negative 6y squared is negative 1 times positive 6y squared. And negative 4 is negative 1 times positive 4. And look at the way we have identified the common factor. The common factor is negative 1. And when negative 1 is pulled out, what are the terms that remain? It will be y to the power of 5 plus 6y squared plus 4. That will be the answer. Alright, let's write them down now. The GCF is negative 1. So, negative y to the power of 5 is negative 1 times positive y to the power of 5. And minus 6y squared is negative 1 times positive 6y squared. And negative 4 is negative 1 times positive 4. We can now pull out the common factor negative 1. That would be negative 1 times y to the power of 5 plus 6y squared plus 4. And you don't need that negative 1 there. That negative 1 can be simply written as a negative sign. So that would be negative y to the power of 5 plus 6y squared plus 4. I hope you understand the difference. There is no difference between these two. There is no need for writing a 1 there. You know that a negative sign stands for a negative 1. Another one. Factor out a negative factor of negative 12t squared plus 48t minus 36. Alright? Can you identify a common factor there? Well, if you look at these numbers, negative 12, positive 48, and negative 36. What is the greatest common factor in those three numbers? You need to get a negative factor. So I'm going to use negative 12 as the common factor of negative 12, positive 48, and negative 36. And so we can now write negative 12t squared is written as negative 12 times positive t squared. Is that alright? Negative 12 times positive t squared is negative 12t squared. How do you write positive 48t? Look at the way I write it. 48t is negative 12 times negative 4t. A negative number multiplied by a negative number is a positive number. So positive 48t is written as negative 12 times negative 4t. Alright? And negative 36 is written as negative 12 times positive 3. Negative 12 times positive 3 is negative 36. And now, what do we have? We have negative 12 as the common factor. We pull that out, and the remaining terms are left inside a parenthesis. So negative 12 is factored out, and inside the parenthesis you have t squared minus 40, what's that sign? Plus 3. Again, I emphasize factoring out a negative factor is an important skill. You must learn that well. Another one. Factor out a negative factor of negative 5p to the 6 q to the power of 3 minus 10p to the power of 4 q to the power of 4 plus 25 pq to the power 7. Now, there are numbers, there are terms in p and terms in q. Let's identify the common factor in each of those. All right, the common factor of -5, -10, and +25. You see, we have taken each of these signs along with the number. -5, -10, and +25. What is the common factor there? I said it is -5. Do you agree with me? I hope so. Because -5 is -5 times +1. -10 is -5 times +2. And +25 is -5 times -5. Okay, so let's write each of these terms. What is the common factor of p to the power 6, p to the power 4, and p? Well, you must tell me that quickly. P to the power 6, p to the power 4, and p, the common factor is p. Alright? What is the common factor of q cube, q to the power 4, and q to the power 7? Can you tell me that? Q cube, q to the power 4, and q to the power 7. You see, among terms like this, the common factor is the smallest. Q to the power of 3 is the common factor. Alright, there you are. So what is the greatest common factor of those three terms? It will be -5p q cube. That is the greatest common factor. And now you need to write each of these terms using this as a common factor. How do you write -5p to the 6 q cube using this as one factor? Well, -5 is factored out, leaving a +1. P to the 6 is factored out, leaving again a +1. And q cube is factored out. I'm sorry, we didn't. -5 is factored out, leaving a +1. P is factored out from p to the 6, leaving a p to the 5. Q cube is factored out from q cube, leaving a 1. So that will be -5p q cube, that is the common factor, times +p to the power 5. I hope you understand that. After -5 is factored out, from -5 you have a +1. From p to the 6th you factor out a p, leaving a p to the power 5, positive p to the power 5. And from q cube you factored out a q cube, leaving a 1. So what is left in the first term is positive p to the power 5. Alright, what is left in the second term after factoring out -5p q cube? When -5 is factored out from -10, you are left with a 2. When p is factored out from p to the 4, you have a p cube. When q cube is factored out from q to the power 4, you have a q. Alright, look at the last term. 25p q to the 7, you factor out a -5p q cube. When you factor out a -5 from a positive 25, the remaining factor is a -5. There you are. Why? Because -5 times negative 5 is positive 25. Now, from P we factor out the P, leaving a 1. From Q to the 7 we factor out a Q cube. What is left is Q to the power 4. And now we factor out the negative 5pq cube, leaving inside the parenthesis p to the power 5 plus 2p cube q minus 5q to the 4. And that is the result of factoring out the greatest common factor. Okay, let's move on. Factor y times b minus 2 minus 5 times b minus 2. Can you figure out the common factor there? Look at the first term. The first term is y times b minus 2. The first term has two factors. The first factor is y. The second factor is b minus 2. The second term is negative 5 times b minus 2. How many factors are there for the second term? Again, two factors. Negative 5 and b minus 2. And look at this. B minus 2 is a common factor. We can pull that out. The GCF is b minus 2, which can be pulled out. Alright? After b minus 2 is pulled out from y times b minus 2, what is remaining is a positive y. Alright? After b minus 2 is pulled out from a minus 5, from this term, what is left there is a negative 5. So let's now pull out b minus 2. b minus 2 comes out. What is left in the first term is a positive y, and what is left in the second term is a negative 5. So that is b minus 2 times y minus 5. Now in the future you must be able to look at this and write it down in one step. And what is that one step? b minus 2 comes out. And that will be, let me write that down for you. b minus 2 comes out like this. And what is left? What is left in the first term is a positive y. What is left in the second term is a negative 5. So that will be times y minus 5. Okay. That's a very simple concept. So y times b minus 2 minus 5 times b minus 2. b minus 2 is a common factor which we pulled out, leaving a y in the first term and a minus 5 in the second term. Okay, let's do another one. Factor z plus 4 times z plus 3 plus z minus 1 times z plus 3. Well, the first term, this is the first term that has two factors. This is the second term that has two factors. Can you identify a common factor for those two terms? Yes, z plus 3 is the common factor there. Okay, can you pull out that z plus 3? Yes, when you pull out that z plus 3, what is left in the first term is z plus 4. Then plus what is left in the second term is z minus 1. Look at that. So z plus 4 times z minus 3 plus z minus 1 times z plus 3. We're going to pull out the common factor. Z plus 3 times what is left in the first is z plus 4 plus what is left in the second is z minus 1. And now simplify inside this parenthesis. What does that give you? That will be z plus z is 2z. 4 minus 1 is 3. So the answer is z plus 3 times 2z plus 3. Okay, so factoring out a common factor is a very important concept. I want you to learn this, do the homework, and learn it very well. Now what I'm going to do is, let's practice one more of this type of factoring. Factor 6b minus 1 times 2b plus 4 minus, what's that sign? 6b minus 1 times b plus 5. Now here again, you have an algebraic expression that contains how many terms? How many terms are here? Look at this. This is one term. A factor multiplied by another factor. It's the product of two terms. That is the first term. Minus the product of two factors. That is the second term. So this algebraic expression has two terms. And each term is given in the factored form. What is the common factor among those two terms? It's very simple. I have identified that using colors. 6b minus 1 is the common factor. So the GCF is 6b minus 1. Once you pull out that 6b minus 1, you must understand what is left in the first term is 2b plus 4. And what is left in the second term is, what's that minus? Minus the quantity b plus 5. You've got to take special care in handling that minus sign. After 6b minus 1 is factored out, in the first term you are left with 2b plus 4. In the second term you are left with minus the quantity b plus 5. There. Okay, I'm going to now factor out this 6b minus 1. You see, I did a little change in here. I made the sign positive by bringing that negative sign over here. You know why I did that? After factoring out the 6b minus 1, what is left in the first term is 2b plus 4. And what is left in the second is minus the quantity b plus 5. You must recognize that. So pull out the common factor 6b minus 1. And now write the other terms in a bracket. Why a bracket? Because we have a quantity that needs to be put in a parenthesis. So bracket, what is left in the first term is 2b plus 4. What is left in the second term is minus the quantity b plus 5. And now before you proceed, you need to distribute that negative 1. And that will be 6b minus 1. You can now change the bracket to a parenthesis. Why? Because we are going to get rid of that parenthesis. How? By distributing that negative sign. Negative 1 times b is negative b, and negative 1 times positive 5 is negative 5. Now simplify inside that parenthesis. 2b minus b is a b, and positive 4 minus 5 is a negative 1. And therefore the answer is, well, the answer therefore is 6b minus 1 times b minus 1. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this part of the lesson here. I'm going to call this part lesson 4.1a, and I'm going to record the second part of this lesson as 4.1b, factoring by grouping. But for the homework, there's only one set of homework. Okay, that is homework for lesson 4.1. For recording purposes, I'm going to divide that into 2. So I will see you for lesson 4.1b a little later.